Designing this is crazy. What? How did you piece together all of this?
Many people asked me how I created this animation, so this will be my quick breakdown for my entry I titled Escaping the Ruby Mines. As soon as the challenge was announced, I took a few days just to get a clear vision of what I'm going for. My goal was to make this entry stand out. Here are the points I kept in mind while planning my idea. Don't go for cars or generic motor vehicles. Add a mid-air twist. Create a detailed environment full of life. Make sure every detail had a purpose to serve the story. With that in mind, I ended up with the idea to create an orc raid in the Dwarven Kingdoms from Lord of the Rings, which inspired me long ago. So after gathering reference and brainstorming about how I'm going to approach things, I was ready to begin. I created a quick modular rail model so I could easily design the main rail and other rails around it. I then created scaffolds to hold the rail. It didn't need to be accurate because of the camera angle and speed. I didn't want it to block background details too much, so I ended up removing big parts of it. I wanted it to look unstable and unfinished. For the cart, I started with a basic model, then refined it into something more interesting and built a simple rig with multiple parented pivots to allow for interesting animation that will convey instability of a character desperately escaping and barely holding on. I tried to animate as less as possible by hand, so I used the motion mixer to combine 3 different Mixamo animations for the main character. I then worked on making the character interact with the carts in the scene. The animation wasn't perfect, but with limited time, it was good enough to move forward. I've decided it's gonna be a ruby mine, so I worked on a simulation to fill the cart with ruby gemstones. To keep them from spilling, I added a temporary plane, started pouring at frame -200, and then moved the cart into frame at high speed. I also added a simulation for the sparks the cart would produce at specific moments of intense friction. At a much later stage, I would also combine those with sparks created in post. With the foreground ready, it is now time for the environment. Designing a complex and engaging environment was key. To make it intriguing, these were the key points I kept in mind while designing the layout. Avoid repetition. Each new location along the short journey should feel unique, not just duplicated structures. Maintain foreground, midground, and background throughout the journey, while letting new areas unfold gradually instead of revealing everything at once. Design locations that could hold large groups of characters. As the story follows a dwarf escaping masses of orcs and trolls, I needed to make sure there are plenty of places to populate them later on. Because it's a ruby mine and I wanted to have lots of small local light sources around the environment, I scattered clusters of ruby gemstones in the rocks all around the environment. Building such a large-scale scene in a short time meant I couldn't create every asset from scratch. Instead, I relied mostly on starting from existing assets. To speed things up, I relied on quick modeling tricks like the symmetry modifier, most notably for the bridges, which played a major role in the layout. After adjusting the base model, I could quickly generate multiple variations of the bridge, experimenting with different shapes and scales. This not only saved a huge amount of time, but also gave me the flexibility to adjust each bridge so it fit naturally within the scene. On a large-scale scene like this, resource management is critical. I focused only on what the camera sees, removing anything out of frame. I worked with instances as much as possible, as the system can easily handle millions of polygons if they are instanced. A good example of this was the rocks and cliffs in the scene. Most of them are from a single instanced rock model. Textures and models were optimized the further they were from camera. The same optimization approach applied to the orcs. This model was perfect due to its generic design. It ensured duplicates wouldn't look cloned. I optimized the mesh much further than it was and brought it to Mixamo. There, I chose the most basic rig, as things like finger keyframe data would not be worth the added way. I prepared plenty of animation variations of the orcs performing different actions to fill the scene. Populating them was quick and efficient thanks to the optimizations. Each clone added only about half a megabyte and barely affected viewport or render performance. The majority of the clones were simply walking, as from such a distance and speed it would be hard to notice them do anything else. The keyframe data for walk cycle was minimal with out of range, set to have them continue their path endlessly. In large walking groups, I could easily tweak each one's timing to be slightly different so they won't appear cloned. I gave some of the orcs torches to act as local light sources. Having these small points of light scattered across such a large scene not only adds to the sense of scale, but also helps illuminate and draw attention to interesting spots in the environment. For the lighting of the scene, I began with two opposing backlights, one cold and one warm, to create a dark, dramatic atmosphere and establish the classic teal and orange look. At this stage, I added volumetric effects, starting with fog to create depth and guide the eye toward the main action. I added volumetric light effects emanating from the key positions of the main light sources, enhancing the sense of depth and atmosphere in the scene. I placed clouds throughout the journey to enrich the atmosphere and break up the vast spaces of the environment. To save resources, I used the same single instanced VDBs for all 9 clones. As each is oriented differently and received lights from different angles, it would not be noticeable. To enhance the action, I also run several simulations for smoke and dust. To create a mysterious smoke around the main troll, I started the simulation a few hundred frames before frame 0. That way, when the action begins, his movement pushes through the smoke, along with some unfortunate orcs caught in his path. For the dwarf, I created 5 different simulations along his journey, planned to be added in post for extra control. The first was meant to enhance the impact of him trampling the orc, but since it happened so quickly from the camera's perspective, it ended up barely noticeable. The second simulation focused on dust trailing off the cart, designed to emphasize the sense of speed as it hurtled forward. The third simulation focused on dust kicked up by the dwarf's jump, creating a lingering trail in the air that followed his movement and emphasized the force of his leap toward the second cart. The fourth simulation was dust from the troll striking the cart. Since the camera passed too quickly for it to read, I cheated by adding a force to push the dust back into view. The fifth simulation captured the dramatic impact of the dwarf crashing into the second cart, generating a burst of dust to emphasize the force of the collision. The simulations will be rendered separately, giving me full control in post to enhance where they add value and remove where they don't. But before reaching the render stage, it will be time to lock in the final lighting setup. The 2 main lights provided a solid base for the scene, but in such a massive environment, there were countless smaller areas I wanted to light locally. To achieve this, I filled the scene with numerous smaller fill lights, each with different colors tailored to their regions, reinforcing the sense of variety I mentioned earlier. With the lighting done, along with everything else, I was ready to make the final render. At this stage, I kept contrast intentionally low and saturation high, giving me the flexibility I like for color grading, where contrast naturally rises and saturated colors tend to wash out. To gain full control over this final stage, I rendered a wide range of masks for different types of objects, which gave me the flexibility to fine-tune their look individually in post and make precise adjustments wherever needed. I also rendered a wide range of passes, which allowed me to adjust and enhance different aspects of the frame in post and refine the overall look with greater precision. For some passes where I needed quick results, Fox Render Farm was a huge help. I could just drop in the scene file and get a full render back in minutes. At the end of large projects, I always set aside time for post-work, where much of the fine-tuning and effects take place. After the broader tweaks are complete, I focus on smaller details, looking for areas that can be improved or enhanced. Here, the passes and masks I prepared help refine those final touches. Part of the post-work involved 3D layers. I exported camera data and 3D planes from Max into After Effects, which gave me precise control to add extra layers of effects, like enhancing sparks from the simulations or amplifying impact moments for greater intensity. Although I could have kept tweaking and adding endlessly, on the final day before submission, I was satisfied with the outcome. From planning to post, every step had led to this moment, the final result.